So by way of introduction, what can I say about myself? I am not a writer by trade. I am a research scientist. Have been doing been in R&D different roles for almost 20 plus years or so. Started off, postgraduate school. I was with DuPont for maybe 15 years or so, and then moved to another company called Eurofins, and there I was director of science. And I've had a number of roles throughout R&D, but always mostly focused in the food detection space, food pathogen detection area. But really, yeah, I'm a scientist, but I'm also an observer of the world and a humorist. And I love to write, and I have been writing for a very long time. I'm hearing an echo here, Al. You hearing that?
Yeah, I do hear it a bit. Maybe we can turn our volume down. Maybe I can
I
turn
see.
mine down a little bit and we can leave
Or
that. And then,
maybe it's my computer.
yeah, if you
Give me a
got your
sec.
computer on, it's probably reflecting back. Mine is not on. I've muted my speakers.
Yeah. Hold
So
on.
hopefully that we'll be able
Give
to
me a sec.
eliminate that. We have R.U. Marshall has joined and KM Eggleston. Welcome, both of you. I don't know you. But what Dan has done here is the everyday junglist. I thought
Douglas.
junglist, but now I've corrected. We're talking junglist. We're talking bass. We're talking drums. And
Correct.
drumming is near and dear to my heart because I'm a fifer. He said I should bring my fife. So I have. I will play a note. There we go. And we've decided to go without video. You can see my Philip K. Dick. Reality is that which is when you stop believing in it, it doesn't go away, is what the full text over Philip's face is. But
There
I
we go.
want to
That
hear
should be better.
more about Dan's career because he's my guest and he's been willing to step up, and that takes a lot of bravery. So go ahead
Sure,
and tell
sure.
me how you got to be a food pathology,
You're close.
microbiologist.
You were close. You're close. Hopefully there's no echo now. I did have to turn my computer off. So I think
Okay,
that it sounds better on my end. It's much better. So sorry about that. But
that's
how did I
cool.
get to be a into food micro? It's a long and winding story. But I was interested in microbiology for a long time. My undergraduate degree actually is in microbiology from
Uh-huh.
Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was awarded an infectious disease fellowship with the Centers for Disease Control. And back then, the CDC was actually a really good organization, a very strong, very well respected organization, unlike today. But then it was, it was a big deal to get this fellowship thing. It was a 1 year deal, and I went up to Boston and I spent a year. But at that time, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jack in the Box outbreak. You remember the big E. coli? Many died. Big
No,
deal.
tell me. I don't
So
know
that
that.
was it. So it was a big out. It was Jack in the Box, the restaurant chain, had an outbreak of E. coli 157H7 in their hamburgers. It killed. I don't remember how many people died, but there were many deaths, many illnesses. It was huge. It was the first time that E. coli 157H7 had been recognized as a
Wow.
pathogen, and
Yeah.
that sort of sparked a whole bunch of things happened because of that.
Hmm.
But one of the things that happened was it got me interested in this food micro area because I was thinking I was going to go into public health, or I really wanted to work at CDC. I wanted to kind of do that, but then I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to graduate school because I got to get more education here. So instead of going right to work, which is what I originally had intended, I went to graduate school and ended up staying there and getting a PhD, actually down in Florida. And there in graduate school, actually, I was working on sensor systems right when 9/11 happened. And so we were actually, ironically, we were looking at actually biowarfare agent detection. So we were looking at
Right.
detection of anthrax just when this thing happened. And so of course, all this money comes flooding into the laboratory. We were basically bare bones operation. We're struggling to get grants and things. And then you're working on something. It's just for by happenstance turns into the next big thing. And since you're already working on it, and you get a lot of advantages. And so we had tons of money came in, and it ended up really, it worked out really nice for myself. But at the same time, I still had this interest always of the bio threat detection thing. I knew was sort of going to go away, which it basically did. But the food pathogen thing was still interesting for me. And so the sensor system that we were working on for the biowarfare agents kind of repurposed that to look at food pathogens, and that's sort of how I ended up get my PhD in that area. And then I got recruited from DuPont. I never even actually applied for a job. I got recruited by DuPont while I was still a graduate student. Basically said, once you're done, come work for us. And so I went to their Central Research and Development Division, which is in Wilmington, Delaware, and it was an amazing place. I mean, Tyvek was invented there, Nomex, all these things, Kevlar, all these things that you've heard of, really
Yeah.
great things everybody knows about were all invented there, and it's a campus, almost like a college campus. So you'd have physicists, next door to you, and you'd have, like spectrometrists across the hall. It was kind of a neat, pretty kind of a neat place to be. But I
Yeah.
spent So many years there doing not food micro stuff. The first half of my career there, which was like 6 or 7 years, I was doing completely different things, all kinds of different things. But mostly at that time, DuPont was moving away from so they were moving into water-based chemistries and paints and things. And so what happens, one of the consequences of moving from away from solvents into water is that bacteria start to grow in everything. So
Yep.
I remember, I don't even see those cars that drive around where the paint's all falling off, how that used to happen. That actually was because bacteria was getting into the paint in the plants, and then when they're coating it onto the car, the paint would not stick properly because it's an electric deposition process they use to put the paint
Okay.
on. And so the bacteria would get in there, and no one knew this, of course, at the time. But then eventually, over time, the paint falls off. Okay, so one of the so we were spending I spent about 6 years of my life trying to figure out how to keep bacteria basically from growing in these big paints, these big tanks of electric coat. And it's not just there; everywhere in the plant, all of a sudden now, where bacteria before it was solvents based, so nothing could grow. Now everything's going water based, because
I
of green
see.
chemistry. And so these plants are falling apart because bacteria now are growing everywhere. So you have biofilm everywhere, pipes breaking. It was kind of a weird time because on the one hand, it's a great thing. You're moving away from these dangerous chemistries, but it made life really hellish for a lot of these plants, these industrial plants, because now they're dealing with an issue they never thought they'd have to deal with before.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting, and it was fun time. And basically what we did is add more chemicals back. So there's biocides that are out there. So you just take that's just different chemicals that are added now instead of the ones we were using before. And I think these different chemicals are safer, essentially, but at the same time, it's kind of ironic, but interesting. But anyways, so I did that for I did that for many years, and then so I left. And then I left DuPont, and that's another long story about why I left there. I got really sick in 2015 and actually died, almost died. Did die, depending on who you ask. I did actually die twice actually in the hospital.
Oh, that's a
Eh,
great theme.
Yes, I had necrotizing pancreatitis. It was actually New Year's Day, actually.
Necrotizing. So the
Necrotizing
pancreas is
pancreatitis.
actually dead.
It was eating itself basically, chewing itself up.
So what happened?
Came out of nowhere. I had no idea. It came out. I woke up, I guess New Year's Day, January 1st, 2015, and I
Okay.
was sick as a dog, and I started throwing up, and I couldn't stop throwing up, and I just felt
Ooh,
my stomach hurt. My stomach hurt so bad you wouldn't
goodness.
imagine the pain.
Yeah.
And of course,
It,
that same day is the worst snowstorm in the history of that part of the country. I was in Delaware at the time, so I go to the ER at like 3 or 4 by ambulance, thinking, "Oh, okay, coming in by ambulance. They're gonna take me right
remember
back."
that.
Well, it turns out the snow is coming down so hard, so there's no doctors can make it in. Okay,
We
so
got
I'm in
like
the
4
ER.
feet here in DC then.
Do you remember that the 2015 years
Yeah,
storm? Anyways, it was crazy. So I'm in this ER. It's basically only me and like one nurse, and I'm dying. I kid you not, I am dying. And the
right,
pain is, I'm dry heaving. The pain is absolutely incredible. I mean,
right.
they say pancreatitis is one of the most painful
It
conditions
is.
you can have, and I
Yep.
kid you not, it was. But I saw 8 hours I spent in the ER waiting room because there was nobody to see me, and they couldn't give me anything either for the pain because you know how it is in the U.S.
Because
They
they
can't.
didn't know what it was, right?
And they don't want to give out painkillers. They can't, they can't or they won't do it. And finally, a doctor came in or whatever happened, and I got taken back and immediately. And then I don't remember what happened after that. I spent a month. I do remember, but I spent a month in the hospital, 3 weeks in the ICU. I was almost. I did. They say I died a couple times. I lived some crazy things in my head, and it's a whole other story. I've written about it. If
Oh,
you
you
want to read
have?
about it,
Good.
I can point you to some things to describe the different things that happened to me. But I had a condition they call ICU induced delirium, and it was.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, it was very interesting and very weird, at
Terrifying.
the end, it was scary. It was scary, but it's also really cool. It's hard to explain.
Well, that's it,
It's life
right?
changing. It's a life
That's
changing experience for
Harrowings,
sure.
right? It's harrowing experience.
Oh,
That's what we're about
what?
here.
Yeah, it was life changing. But what saved me in the end was if I had this thing what they call compartment syndrome, where basically your stomach is filling with fluid from the infectious processes that are going on. So they cut me open from sternum to waist there, and then they pull you apart and they let you drain basically 3 days. They drain you. You're just open on a table with gauze stuffed into your gut there as they try to
God,
soak up. It's just crazy, man. But it saved my life. Okay, and so
I'm glad.
they think, but the prognosis here for people that have this is very bad. I think 90% of people don't live beyond 3 years or something after they've had this,
Well,
and
you dodged that.
most have significant complications as well. And I've had none of. I'm basically totally healthy again. I've had
Wow, great.
no serious complications. I'm in really probably the best shape I've been in since my 20s or 30s, and thanks to climbing and different things I do now physical activity wise. But
Climbing?
it's so I've been I was really climbing is a big. I'm really into bouldering, so
Uh-huh.
that's my thing. I have a
Bouldering.
wall here.
Oh, yeah.
Bouldering. That's climbing
Yeah.
without ropes,
Right,
and so I
right.
do
I
have
know.
have a wall here at my house that I built, and in Mexico, and yeah, I really love it. But I think that's kind of saved my life. But
Well, yeah,
yeah,
bouldering
2016
is
was a tough time.
something
Tough
I got
time.
into a little bit up at Old Rag Mountain. I don't know if you've ever
Uh,
been down there in Virginia where they have
I
Old
have
Rag
not.
Mountain, but that's a good place to boulder. And
Yeah.
learned it from a guy who is really significant in my life. We were talking a little bit about my background in Williamsburg before we started, and you'd gone there as a kid, right? I don't know if you went to the gunsmith shop ever, but the master
Yes.
gunsmith from the 60s, he was there until I guess sometime in the 70s. I think they made him curator of furniture because but me, him and my dad, they did a lot of documentary research, and Wallace had this great eye for tool marks. And they started identifying Virginia furniture that had been made in Williamsburg out in the field, at different collections in people's homes and stuff. And once they identified it, they would sell it. Wallace would buy it and then sell it to the foundation. And the family, they made him curator of furniture, so it'd be conflict of interest for him to do that.
Huh.
But anyways, these were incredibly interesting people, and he was a big boulder and rock climber, and did it with ropes and stuff too. Um, this is how his life got saved. He didn't know he had kidney cancer, but he did.
Mm.
He had a cancerous
Yeah.
kidney, and he was rock climbing, and he got up to the top of one of these spots, and he was about to. Get out of there with the equipment and stuff. He took a step back after the other guys had gone down to the car, and he fell 400 feet, broke his ankle, had to walk out on a broken ankle, got all banged up. And when the doctors got him and started working on him, they realized he had a cancerous kidney. So basically, falling off the
Mm.
mountain saved his life.
Saved his life. Saved his life. Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
kidney
really
can't.
creative guy. Anyway, let me get back to your pancreatitis and stuff. That is one of the most painful conditions to have. And I am very interested in people's stories of beating the Reaper. I don't know. Do you know the Firesign Theater by any chance? It was a
I don't. No,
comedy
I
act
don't.
that did all LP stuff. They had
I
this
don't
skit.
know.
They had this skit called Beat the Reaper, like a game show.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah.
Any I won't belabor that. I've had a few dodges with it too. Pneumococcal pneumonia almost took me out in 1996, and
Mm.
I've written about that. I think it's great to write about it. And you were talking about
I do.
ICU's delirium, right?
I see
You
you
get
induced delirium. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What can you tell me about that?
So it's a well known condition. It's been well known for a long time, and it has to do with it's a combination. They think it mostly has to do with the powerful drugs, of course, that they're giving you typically when you're in the ICU, many
I
of which
see.
are hallucinogens.
Mhm.
But also there are certain compounds that your body releases, your brain releases, the chemistry of your blood changes
Oh,
because your
right.
kidneys start to fail. Oftentimes, in my case, my kidneys were failing,
The
so you have a lot of
poisoning.
these
Yeah.
you're basically poisoning yourself. But a lot of these things are also potentially hallucinogenic, or have other psychological effects that are sort of unknown, quite actually, but they cause all things, and they cause altered thinking and wild hallucinations and but it's and I can see, people call it near death experiences. For me, it was, a death experience. I call it because, you live, at least and for me, I lived, three lifetimes in my head, and it was real. And I still have memories of the time. It's so interesting. I still have memories, and it's very difficult for me to disentangle these fake memories, if you will, from
Right.
I mean, real memories. Like I feel
Right.
like I actually lived these because I had these whole lives I lived through when I was in the hospital,
Right.
and then there's like my real life, and so I find myself thinking about these fake lives, if you will, and it's baffling to me. And it's really fascinating and very interesting, and it is kind of scary. Some parts were scary, but
Yes.
mostly it was just fascinatingly interesting and strange. I have to say, I have to say. So, and I would not trade it for anything in the world. I'm really glad I went through it, and I'm happy I survived it, and it's given me
Mm.
it's given me a lot of, let's say, less fear of death and that sort of thing. I know a lot of people are
Right.
the people don't want to talk about it. Everyone's scared of it, but I don't have that anymore because I feel like I've
Yeah.
been through it. I kind of know what's coming, I think. So, and it's not so bad. Let's put it that way. At
That's
least for me,
right.
it wasn't.
I mean, that's part of the experience. When I was there, I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
oxygen deprived, and
yeah.
hypoxia
Right.
can really distort your thinking and distort time. And I would go to sleep for 15 minutes and have these month-long dreams.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly
And I'd
what you mean.
wake up, it was different lifetime. You're right. It was very real,
Yeah,
but it wasn't. And or this isn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had another time, not too long back, 2022. I talk about this in an interview I did on KSQQ radio up in the Rogue Valley of Oregon. I have a
Mhm.
friend up there, so random connection like this, you know. And
Yeah.
what happened to me there was went down to the Phillips collection, which is this modern museum of art, right? The earliest
Mhm.
one in America dedicated exclusively to modern art. And it's about 2 blocks from the house. I went out in the heat of July, at like 100 degrees plus, from a air conditioned bunker, as I call my place here. It's the bunker, and
Mhm.
walked down there, and I felt kind of weird. I went to the bathroom first, and then I was feeling kind of weird, so I decided to walk home again. Because
Mhm.
I remember there, it doesn't matter if I just come and go as I please. I consider that whole art collection to be mine, and I just share it with everybody.
Right. I'm sure they just think that as well. I'm sure.
As long as I don't try to remove anything that
Right. Or
created
sell it.
my
Right.
delusions, right? I like my
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
delusions. I just don't try to inflict them on others. The
Right.
pleasant part. Um, so I go back home and I lay down in the back, and then suddenly I'm nauseous. I go to
Oh.
throw up, and my wife comes back hearing me retching, and I call for her, and she comes back, and I get in the shower and I try to cool myself down, and I'm just getting further and further out of my head until she calls the EMTs. They come in, they think I'm on something because I'm behaving so
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
And they packed
Heat
me off to the emergency room at George Washington Hospital. I've been there a couple times for
heat
different
stroke.
things.
I'm gonna guess heat
And
stroke or heat
it's
something.
heat exhaustion, I think it's
Heat
called.
exhaustion is what they call it. Yeah. Okay.
And I came back
Close.
around to myself and checked myself out against medical advice after they did an MRI. That's where I found out my brain is shrinking.
Brain is shrinking.
It
Interesting.
naturally
S-
shrinks in
So it's
humans.
more makes it more efficient, probably. I would think.
I would hope.
Less
Tightens up
distance
the
for the
connections, right?
right. Exactly. Less distance for
And
the
more
electrical
fluid
stroke.
around it for shock absorption. That helps
There
when
you
you're
go. All
tall,
right.
right? You get a lot of
Yeah.
head injuries
Right.
when you're tall.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It was weird.
Interesting.
And
Huh.
it was a fair cop that the EMTs thought I had taken something, but I hadn't. I'm straight, you know. I've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
in recovery for a while. I don't do drugs. I don't do alcohol. And I was apparently dying, but
Hmm.
I dodged the Reaper again. And we all do have close brushes, probably more than we know. And the fact that we're
Yeah.
here, I don't know. How do you feel about it? Do you feel like you have more of a sense of purpose in your life that you must be here for a reason since you survived that?
I and a yes and a no. I mean, I like to tell my wife, my second wife, that I came back. I came back for her. The
Oh,
romantic thing,
no.
and I do feel like that's sort of the case because
Did you marry
she
her
was.
after the event?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
so pretty kind of sad. In 2016, I was married at the time when I got sick.
Yeah.
Well, unbeknownst to me, my wife was also sick.
Oh,
In 2016, she passed away
I'm
unexpectedly, basically
sorry.
right as I was recovering.
Right.
And she helped me. I mean, we had been together for 16 years as best friends, lovers, whatever. And then we got
Mhm.
married. We'd only been married for 2 years,
Wow.
and so that was tough, and
I bet.
that's why I left DuPont, and when I ended up actually moving home to live with my parents in Kentucky, I locked myself in a bedroom there, and I didn't come out for 6 months, and it was a difficult time. Grief is, you know, especially after coming off of such a difficult physical illness, and then dealing with that grief of that death
Yes.
was tough, very
Yes.
tough. But as I always tell people is you can't. Time goes on. I mean, life continues. And when I came out of the hospital, I had another weird condition where I was convinced I had died and I was dead and then everything was fake and I was just living in this fake world. Right? It was
Yes.
very Philip K. Dickian. It was very Philip K. Dick. And I was
Yes.
just
I
like
had the
going through.
same thing.
I was going through the motions of just like, nah, dude, I'm dead. I'm just going through the motions. But eventually you're like, well, if I'm dead, I still got to eat. I'm hungry still. If I'm dead, I still got these people talking to me. I got to talk. I got to do something, even if I am dead. I don't want to just be bored and do nothing. So it's all of a sudden, before you know it, you're living again. It's like it's life again.
Oh, man, I gotta
So
interject
it
here.
was please go ahead.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me, on the other side of the heat stroke thing in 2022. For the next 6 months, I was in this quasi state where I was not sure that I had not died and that afterlife was just particularly disappointing because it
Right.
was a continuation of real life. It was
Wait,
everything that
so
was happening to me And I was convinced that it was the last nanosecond of consciousness. You know that thing I talked about,
Yeah.
time dilation when you got
Right.
hypoxia?
Yeah.
Was convinced it was, and it may still be, the last nanosecond of my consciousness mapped out what my life would have been had I lived,
That's
and
what it
did it
felt like.
all in that last split second before it winks out entirely.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
it just goes on. And I'm not sure that that's not how this whole death thing works. But
It could be.
let me get back to
It may be. It's interesting to hear that another person
the
with a
other
similar scenario.
anecdote
Because
I have for you is this.
please,
And that is, there's a scene in the movie The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, came out in the 80s.
yeah, I've
And
heard of it. I never saw it, but I have heard of the movie.
I will recommend it to you because there's a
Okay, all
scene
right,
in there. I'm going to spoil this scene a little bit.
that's
They're
fine.
consumed by a sea monster.
Okay.
And in it, they find a couple of the Baron's compatriots who've been in there for a long time. And they're sitting playing cards. They say, "Come on in, have a seat, join in the game." And say, the two who are in there say, "We're all dead here. This is hell." The other one says, "Heaven." The other one says, "Hell." They have an argument
Yeah,
about whether they're in heaven or hell. And you know
yeah.
what? There's a little girl in there played by Sarah Polley, I think her name is, and there's a biography of her out there too, which is pretty good. But Sarah says something to the effect of the little character. She's played. What is her name in that? I can't remember. I'll have to look at it again. But she says, "Don't be stupid." Sad. Now, how are we going to get out of here? And of course, the pinch of snuff can be most efficacious. So they get the sea monster to sneeze them out.
I see. I see.
But that's only one scene. There's a whole lot else of good stuff.
I'll have to check
Robin
that out.
Williams is in it with a
That's
detachable
what. Yeah,
head.
that's what I remember. I remember Robin Williams. I think was in that. Yeah. Interesting.
Poor Robin. But he
Yeah.
gave us a hell of a gift.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Good guy.
Uh,
I miss him
yeah,
too. Good guy.
I
But anyways,
went to
that's actually what started. That's actually what started me writing, though. Actually, was that
that got you writing.
my wife's passed because I didn't
The
have any
grief.
way. Yeah, I didn't have any way to kind of to express the things that were happening to me, and Medium had basically just came out. Like I was one of the first people on that platform, I think, and or very early on the platform, which then it subsequently ended up banning me for life from, so I can't ever go back. But
Which one?
it's a whole other story. The Medium, that's a whole other story. I'm banned for
Sure.
Medium. I can't ever go back. Was suspended first and then banned, and so I can't at least under my own name I can't ever go back.
How the
But
heck did that happen? You mind telling us, or is it
I sure
secret?
no, it's fine. I know it's not, I've written about it. I've read published a story on Substack about it. Actually, I've revisited it again, how it happened. One of my things that I was really into, and I still am. I don't do it very as much anymore because of the risks. Is parody. Okay, and one of the things I like to do is to take things that I would read that people would write, and things that I thought were really great or really terrible or whatever, and I would
Oh,
rewrite them. Basically, I would take the article, and I would try to basically reverse it if you can, like a mirror image of it, but keep the same tone but make the message the opposite. Kind of like just really mess with the people's head. And people really liked it. And I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was really funny, and most people really liked it. But there was a few people, a few authors, who did not get the joke or did not find it funny. And then one in particular who really
mm,
raised a massive stink and actually started a Facebook page. It was a whole big campaign against me. It was like I didn't even know about any of this. My wife found all this stuff out online. I was in the middle of this. She started this anti-Dan Facebook campaign, like a whole web page and everything, basically because saying I stole her work or whatever because I did one of these parody articles. And
mm,
and anyways, media management got involved or whatever safety and whatever team, and
mm,
they suspended my account. And so that was a year I was suspended, and then they let me back in. And I said I wrote this whole big apology thing. I said I'll never do it again, and I I just couldn't help myself. And I did one, and I did another one, and the very first one I did, I guess I got unlucky, but or somebody was watching, and they just said no, you're done. You said you weren't going to do it again, and
you're
you're
not
basically done. So
trustworthy. Yeah.
you're done basically. So, and it was a really great
Friendship.
one actually. It was really fantastic. But I have to say, I just did another one for the first time ever on Substack. I haven't I spoke to the author and this time first to
Oh,
make
good.
sure there would be no problems because I don't want to get myself suspended from Substack or whatever, get anybody
Amen.
upset. So that'll be coming out soon, and it actually I think it ended up I think it's pretty funny. It was something this woman wrote about men. It was it's kind of one of these sexist, not sexist, but it was men are it was one of these what do you call them, stereotype, very stereotypical kind of thing. And so
Mhm.
my reply thing was also very stereotypical, I don't know. I thought it was really great. I think she we'll have to, you'll have to read the article to see how it came out in the end, but I think it came out pretty good. And I will not get suspended for it. I'll say I know that. So, or lose my privileges to write on Substack.
Yeah, we
So,
will not want that because I really
yeah.
am very much interested in supporting writers on Substack, and I
Oh,
have
thanks, man. That's
subscribed to
great to hear.
you now an annual subscription, and we got to support each other, is what I feel, and I can only be the change I want to see in the world. I try to put my money where my mouth is.
You're
So
right about
yeah,
that.
and, we can do something here. One of my mantras, and I'm changing the subject, sorry, a little bit.
And I'll
We'll
play,
get back to
please.
whatever you want to talk about, I promise. Um, but it's that every cent spent is a vote for the kind of world we are co-creating. I'm beginning to believe that we are Homo economicus, not Homo sapiens anymore. Because basically we're consumers, right? We're run by the nose by corporations that we fund, but we do have the power. I'm a big Patti Smith fan. I don't know if you followed Patti Smith on Substack, but she's pretty cool. And
Oh,
she's old now, but she's out there doing it. She just got finished with a concert in Prague recently.
hmm,
She's coming back around with the 50th anniversary of Horses. So
hmm.
that dates it. But what why am I talking about her? I guess it's because she puts it out there. She'll sit down and just tell people have the power. There's a song she co-wrote with her husband, Fred Sonic Smith, before he passed away. Talk about grief, losing your spouse. It can't be anything much worse than bringing it back to you there. In my case, I lost my first wife too by her decision making. and yeah, it was hurtful, and I survived it.
Yeah,
I didn't kill her
yeah.
or anything.
All right.
I was tempted, but I did not do that. I've been really good about this principle called live and let live. And I realized one day, Dan, that after you let them live, everything is because you let them live. That happens to them after that. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of empowering. The
Yeah.
next thing that
I
happened is I got kind of tired of doing the first date thing in this age of the internet, you know? Oh, there you go. You got your camera off. That's great. Your sound's out too, I think. Still with me? Hello, Dan. You there? Hit your microphone. You seem to have muted yourself in the process of getting your camera off. Try again. There you go.
there you go. You're back. Sorry about that. I had to respond to my wife there. She's wondering why she can't get a hold of me, and I forgot to neglected to tell her about this whole thing.
Oh, well,
So
you
no big deal.
cool? I mean,
Yeah, we're
I
good.
don't have
Yeah,
to
I'm good.
keep you too long. We're about
No, I'm
half
good. I'm
hour
good.
in.
I want to comment one thing about what you said, and
Go ahead,
I
please.
agree. I agree with what you're saying on the consumerism thing, the consumer thing, but I don't like it. I have to say I'm not a fan. I really am unhappy with the way that I see I see these posts and it's the younger people and they're saying my so and so is selling this and so and so is selling that and so and so is selling this and my question always in my head is there anybody that's not selling something?
Uh,
It's just
yeah.
it drives me nuts. I'm so I guess sick of the consumer I guess
It'd be
philosophy or
nice
the
if we had a gift economy, right?
yeah, I know, and of course, obviously, it's a pipe dream, and you're not going to be communists or whatever, and everybody's going to share and share alike. But we also don't have to be cutthroat capitalists about every damn thing.
Well,
And it
that's
just
right.
and it just drives me nuts that's the default assumption is that there's no other way than the consumer way or the capitalistic way, and because there are middle
Oh,
grounds
yeah.
to be
There
had,
are gift
and
economies, no doubt. And
it's just
we can barter, we can help each other out. People do barter for different things, right? Do they barter where
yeah.
you are and do you wanna?
Yeah, there is some bartering that goes on, but Mexico, even though it's so-called a socialist country, is a capitalist. The economy is capitalist. They have taxes. They have everything else
Mhm.
that the U.S. has. It's very similar in that way. They're a little bit less, let's say, mean. They're a little bit less stingy to the poor and the dispossessed and such as than the United States. But in all other ways, the economies are basically very similar, and the political systems are very similar too. Not quite as dysfunctional here in Mexico, which is hard to believe, but, but in any case, yeah. So people I think are generally good. I know my wife disagrees. She's one of the people that thinks people are generally bad, and
Well, the
she's
people are primates.
yes,
Yeah.
we are animals. It's easy to forget that we are actually animals, and just like other animals out there, we have bad things we can do, and it's hard sometimes. But I try to keep the optimistic outlook on things, and and
Yeah.
do think most people have other people's best interests at heart, or at least they don't have evil intent. Maybe they don't have other people's best interests at heart, but I don't think most people have are out there looking to really hurt people, generally speaking. Obviously, there's
Generally
exceptions to that.
Generally speaking, I agree. I think, though, that they're not awake and aware for the most part. I think
Yes,
even
for the
I
most
am
part, yeah,
not.
correct.
I
Yeah,
am
very true.
you know the G.K. Chesterton thing where he's asked by a newspaper or something, different writers were asked the question, "Dear sir, what is wrong with the world today?" And his answer was, "Dear sir, I am."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Tom Shadyac took that and made a film called I Am after he had
Hmm,
a bike accident, and he ended up hurting his head,
hmm,
concussion, and he had really deep depression after that. You
yeah.
know how you can get suicidally depressed?
Yes.
And he started doing a search for meaning in his life and realized he could scale back. He didn't have to have the Hollywood mansion. He was a director of like Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Jamie
Yeah,
Carrey.
yeah, yeah,
And it's a really good film. I Am,
yeah,
it's called.
yeah.
And it's
I,
uplifting. I like those documentaries that kind of lift me up. Yeah.
yeah, I do too. The thing, the minimalism thing is another one that, and I appreciate the guy's, intent there. But I really is one of these things that irritates me too, because you minimalism is great when it's optional. I guess is a thing I like to say. It's not so great for the people like the homeless, and I spent a lot of time actually
Right.
among the homeless in Kentucky for different reasons. I had a friend that was homeless for a long time. I was trying to help, and so I
Interesting.
spent a lot of time with homeless people, and by and large, they're assholes for the most part. But
What, the
they're mental.
homeless?
The majority of them have mental illnesses. But
Hmm.
and they're not not all that great of people for the most part. But I got sidetracked here. But for them, minimalism, they would love, they'll take it, whatever it is these minimalists want to give away, they're like, I will take it, and it's great. I think it's stoicism, all this stuff. But it's always like the rich white guys that are pushing this stuff about minimalism and living minimally, and it's
Yeah,
easy to say that when you
that's kind
have
of a
everything.
good point. A
it's
good
it's so
point.
easy to say I'll give it away and I don't need it when you have it, but when you don't have it, man, you really want it. That's what I learned from the homeless people. I mean, they need it, and they want to have these things that these people are giving up. And again, it's kind of counterintuitive to what I was just saying about the consumer society and everything. But it's yeah, I don't know. It's been a
Primary
lot. It could
behavior
come.
overall,
It's, maybe it is, and I'm not saying that's the case for this guy. I think many people that do that are very sincere about it, but I'm not sure they fully
Well,
consider, what they're saying when they say
right. The
it.
mindfulness about it, being able to step outside yourself and check yourself,
Yeah, it's
against
hard to do.
that's really nice, happy horseshit you're shoveling there, man. But it might just be horseshit.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I say a lot. I definitely do a lot of that shoveling of shit
I
for
have a little
sure.
motto for myself that I try to use, and I'm probably not good at it because I'm definitely an imperfect vessel through which what I hope is loving kindness flows. Somebody else said they used the word metta here, METTA, which means
Yeah.
loving kindness, as I understand in the Buddhist area. But what I
Mm.
try to do is use this little phrase, do not shit yourself. And what I mean by that is literally and figuratively, do not keep control over that and don't put yourself on. Don't give yourself like my little delusion about the Phillips collection is actually mine.
Right. Yes.
Where I first picked that up was I was working in the Carnegie Museum of Art in the conservation section. I was the secretary to the chief conservator. I'm about the last person you would ever want to be a secretary, by the way. But I tried to keep order,
So,
and tried to,
so you're well
order.
connected in the art world. It sounds like you have some connections in the art world. That's interesting. I have an art dealer friend here in Mexico who's fairly well renowned, and an art collector friend as well. I mean, maybe we have to connect you guys,
Yeah,
but it's
let's
interesting.
amplify each other's signals. That's what I think of art.
Yeah,
It's like a node on a non-hierarchical network,
it
and I
is. It
pick up a
is.
signal and I'll amplify it, just like a neuron.
Yeah, yeah,
A
I like it.
neuron in the
So,
noosphere.
speaking of the
So,
Buddha, I don't know if you read one of my more recent pieces I wrote about Buddhism, and it wasn't about Buddhism really. It was about 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 war and the use of war, being anti-war,
yep.
but in the sphere of fighting and violence. But when it comes to the self, it's all about war, and it's all about conquering yourself and defeating evil and defeating your and the contradictions of that. It's very hypocritical in my mind. It really bothered me. I never really thought about it because I was reading some Buddhist texts and some things the Buddha
Uh-huh.
said, and it was like and he's so right about a lot of things he says about war and how and the just war being and all the things he says. Like, wow, he's spot on. He's spot on. He's anti-war, anti. But then the very next sentence is like, we must defeat, ourselves. We must the conquest of our attention. It's all these war terms, and
Right,
it
right.
just, to me, and I was in my head, I'm like, wait a second, you just said war is horrible. You're totally anti-war, but except when it comes to the self. And in that case, you can go to war because that. And then to me, it says, well, and the reason you can do that is because we're basically bad people. And Christianity has that same issue with the original sin, and it's like you're evil, you're going to be evil, so it's justified to go to war against yourself. But that's the only just war. Any other, at least in Buddhism, that's the only just war. Every other war
Mhm.
is unjust. But
Yep.
that's just that really is can't be healthy. I think for people's mentality. I mean, it doesn't feel healthy to me to be at war all the time, especially with yourself. And even it's not like external wars are bad enough, but wars with yourself, or you're never going to win. So I know it's there's translational issues there. I'm sure the Buddha was not speaking English. I'm sure maybe things translate a little bit differently, and so it could be partly that, but it's just really struck me how in the Eastern religions in particular, the war attitude is it's very much anti-war, except when it comes to the self. And in
Yeah.
that case, it becomes like totally pro-war. That's like, let's
You
go
know,
to
I
war.
have I have this whole vision of how do you win the arm wrestling match with yourself, right? Clasp your hands together, push and pull. You let go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. You
And
gotta
I've
just quit.
watched that happen with a lot of people, how they create their own misery. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
between my ears, that's where the problems are. Dear sir, I am the problem and that's what's wrong
Yeah.
with the
Oh
world.
yeah.
But you
Yeah.
know what? There's layers of self that I think I like how Jung sort of postulated that the ego is a projection of the self, that we're presenting to each other our egos. But it's nothing. It's just a mask. It's just a put
Yeah.
on. Pete Townsend phrased it well in Eminence Front. You familiar with that song by any chance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Goes way
Yeah.
back, 1982 or so. It's all just a put on. And you could show up and join the party dressed to kill, but killing is really just like taking off a set of clothes and putting on another one, or dying is. And, you and I are dead anyway.
Right. Right. Apparently so. I thought I was the
Carrying
only
on the
one, but it's
afterlife.
glad to know I'm not the only one.
Well, right. Isn't it amazing that we both had that experience?
It is. Another person actually contacted me had something similar happen to actually on Substack, believe it or not. After he actually saw something I wrote, and it was felt so interesting to hear his story too, and the experiences he had when he had he had traumatic brain injury, and he said he lived he said he felt like he lived 1,000 years, and he had a whole community, a whole family, like a whole nother world, and he's like, I can't wait to get back. That's what he says, what he told me. So he's like looking forward to. He's not trying to kill himself or anything, but he said he's got no fear of because he says he knows exactly where he's going when he dies, and that's the place, and it's a great place. So that's a positive thing to hear
Well,
from somebody.
yeah. The bathroom guy is chiming in here. He says, indeed, it is not to be at war with oneself. It is to walk with oneself the path in the middle way. He was the one who threw out meta earlier, and I had reflected it back. Um, so, yeah, bathroom guy, thanks. You might be need to be
Bathrobe guy. It's the bathrobe guy, not the bathroom
a
guy.
bathrobe guy. I'm
The
sorry.
bathrobe guy. That's a very critical distinction,
He
probably
says,
for
howdy
him.
to Richard Hogan, PhD 2 and DBA joined. I don't know what a DBA is. Do you?
DBA. A DBA. No, I don't.
I don't know.
Don't
I'll
know.
look it up sometime.
Bathrobe guy.
Or you could just tell us, Richard, you want to tell us what a DBA is? Steve Bradley just joined. Okay, great. I'm just looking at if we got any other
Doctor of
comment.
Business
Into Mystery
Administration.
joined. Into Mystery is going to be a guest here soon. I hope.
Oh.
I got to remember when that is. Homo economicus bathrobe guy.
He loved it. He loved that one. That's something the bathrobe guy would like, I would think.
Geraldine A.V. Hughes says she loves us both. Take ta for now. I think she had a hard time
Oh,
listening to that. Oh,
oh,
somebody's been not being very nice. Oh, wait, she's talking about herself. So she's talking. So she doesn't like to hear about death, I guess, and suffering and
yeah.
all that. It's hard.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
is hard. I'm the same way. Nobody necessarily likes to hear about it. I don't really talk about it very often. I'm not one.
I'm glad you did. I appreciate it. It's about being vulnerable too. A lot about being. In
Yeah.
fact, if you look at mine stuff, my very first real post called "Getting Acquainted" came, and I used a picture from the day of my father's funeral. He died at the age of 91. We talked a little bit before we got on here about how I'm running the Harold B. Gill Foundation, LLC, which is to preserve and protect his creative legacy. My own and my grandfather's were all Harold B. Gills. We weren't very inventive with names. One but in fact, they were both born on the same birthdays, January 16th, 1907 and 1933. I missed it by a couple weeks. I was born February 4th. I didn't want to come out. But it was cold on February 4th,
Right, right.
1963.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
I was born at 3:21 in the morning. The
Oh, very cold.
coldest,
Very cold.
clearest night, Dad said,
In
he was out
Virginia?
parking
Was
in
this in Virginia? In
in
Virginia?
Williamsburg,
Or
Virginia. Yeah, my mother
that's right. In Williamsburg.
was
Okay.
like
Yeah.
23 years old. My father was a historian by then at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and he'd have a like 54-year career there. Um,
Wow.
Mostly on, but occasionally he was from part time. His last, he from 58 to 81.
So is there a Hal Gill Jr.? Do you have a son? Do you have to carry on the Gill
Well, not
tradition
a
here? Or,
fourth. There will be no fourths, is what my first
you know, for us.
ex-wife said, and hopefully my last ex-wife.
Huh?
And
All right.
I think Lynn wasn't too down with it either. We tried to have a kid, and you talked about your health challenges. So I'll talk a little bit about what happened with us. We got married at I was 45, she was 40, and we immediately started
Yeah.
trying, but
Yeah.
no, nothing
Yeah.
took. And
Yeah.
that's kind of hard anyway at that age. You usually need assistance, it
We're,
seems.
we are trying. Yeah, we are actually trying with my wife now as well, and she's 40, and I am 51, as I already said.
Mhm.
And so yeah, and it's yeah. Well, we're still trying. We haven't given up hope. We'll
Good.
see.
What happened with
But
us was about a month and a half into our marriage, 2 months, something like that. Lynn started having these symptoms of pain throughout her body, and you're talking about pancreatitis is painful, so is autoimmune hepatitis,
oh
which she finally got diagnosed with, and she was put on drugs that pregnant women should not touch.
yeah,
Azathioprine, I think it's called, and that keeps
yeah,
her from rejecting her liver and keeps the liver
yeah.
from rejecting itself, which is basically what the autoimmune thing is. She says she
Right.
likes. She says she's taking self-loathing to the cellular level.
Right. That's a good way. I like that.
When I met
That's a good
her,
way to characterize autoimmune disorders. Self-loathing to a molecular level. I like that.
I met her at a little jewelry store called Bedazzled, which was right down here in
uh,
DuPont Circle, where we live now. And speaking of DuPont, and
yeah. Right.
then I met her there at a bead store. It's called Bedazzled with a BEAD. And because she was a jewelry maker, and she had a little business on the side, you know what it's called? Hanging by a
No.
hanging by a thread.
Good one. Good one.
Hanging by a thread.
Uh,
So
it's
she's
very
got
good.
this
It's fun.
really interesting sort of dark side, and I've got it
Uh,
too to some extent, but I'm a little more like a puppy, and she's
uh-huh.
always bringing me down to earth, which is nice. Pin for my every balloon. But then what happened was after she got off the prednisone, and we were going to a Carolyn Mace thing, of like defying gravity was Carolyn Mace's book of the time. She's one of those new age
Yeah.
thinker type
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
people.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, we were going to turn our lives around at that point. We had gained a lot of weight, been sitting around too much,
Yeah.
watching TV, binging Lost, and what was that,
Uh-huh.
Project Runway or something?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good one.
that was what she was into, so I was into it too because I adapt. I'm a chameleon, right? I become what I'm
Yeah.
around.
Well, we tend to do that for women. Actually, we do that a lot for women. At least I
Right,
do. I
right.
did.
Because after all, you were primates, right? We
Yeah.
know what we want and how to get it.
Yeah. Well, maybe not
Anyway.
how to get it. We know we want it. Speak for yourself on knowing how to get it. But yeah.
Well, she had a stroke,
Mm.
and I'm pretty sure why she had it. This is kind of a joke, but it's also kind of probably true. She really hates Bob Dylan, but she really loves me. And Bob was doing a concert at George Mason University, and she entered the NPR contest to win tickets and won. And
Oh.
it was
Huh.
supposed to be like Veterans Day, November
Huh.
11th of 2009. And we went to the Carolyn Mace thing on the 7th, I think, or the 8th. I guess it may be the 8th. And in the night, she had a bad headache, so she took her normal, migraine medicine, but she got a much worse headache than she'd ever had
Huh.
before. We took her to the hospital. In the emergency room, they couldn't find anything on the CAT scan. There was a
Huh.
little clot off a perforated artery off the main vertebral that supplies a spot in the brainstem about as big around as a nickel and about as thick as a stack of maybe 2 or 3 nickels. that area was killed by the clot. But they had done a spinal tap to check for meningitis, so they couldn't use clot busting drugs once they realized what was happening to her. And therefore, she was paralyzed on the left side of her body for the rest of her life at 42.
Ah,
And that we are in a three-legged race through life, I like to say. She's a HR director at Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership now, holding down a full-time gig, and God bless her. She does everything with just an ankle foot orthotic on one leg. The left arm hangs there, doesn't work. No more jewelry
ah,
making. She gave
right,
away
right.
all the jewelry making equipment. And,
Ah,
we're getting through it. We're getting through it. And I think that in some ways it's made us tighter because, well, there's certain things she can't do for herself. Put her hair
right. You
back in a
gotta,
ponytail. I do that.
right. You gotta, yeah, right.
But I
Huh.
quite often will ask her, "Hey, Lynn, you need help?" And she's like, "Nope, I'm good, got it." And I'm like, "Good. I get credit for health offering help."
At least you offered. At least you offered. Yeah. Well,
but
yeah, that is it.
but she's really just amazing. She's from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I don't know if you know much about
Bro.
Latrobe, but it's coal mining
Home of
country.
yeah, that's home of one of those beers, Rolling
Rolling
Rock, I think,
Rock,
right? Rolling Rock, right?
Rolling
That's right.
Rock. You know,
Yes.
my father-in-law that I never met because he died in 2005 of bile duct cancer of all things. He was legally blind, and he had actually been in the army, and they realized he memorized the eye chart, I guess, and he had gotten into the paratroopers. So,
You memorized the eye
he
chart. A good
he
move.
didn't see the
That's a good one.
ground coming up, so they got him out
Yeah.
of there before they threw him out of an airplane.
Ah,
But his name was George W. Bush, George William
ah,
Bush,
I see.
and he registered to vote against himself in 2000. But,
Hmm.
he was legally blind, but he was a forklift driver at Rolling Rock. They had, like, marks on the forklift to help him see where they were because he had this macular degeneration, so he had the reverse of
Uh-huh.
tunnel vision. The center
Yes.
was not visible, but around the edges was. So, yeah, Rolling Rock. There you go. And
Uh,
then that's home of Arnold Palmer and Mister Rogers too, for that matter. So,
so Hal,
any
you actually your voice, you sound like an NPR guy to me. Like
well,
you could
thank
have a
you.
show on you could have a show on NPR, I think, with your
My
voice.
sister, Melissa Gill Thompson, was the
Yes.
chief development officer over at, NPR for quite a while.
Oh,
She's now at
watch.
Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, so
Okay.
raising money for
You
them.
should you know, you get yourself a show. Lobby yourself for a show over there because I think you got the voice for it. I think.
Well, they tell me that. Yeah, I've heard that, and I've been using it. I was at the Lock-In Festival. Do you know anything about those festivals that have, like,
No.
jam bands and stuff around? You're into
Not,
drums
not,
and bass, right?
yeah, well, not into the jam band so much, but no,
Yeah,
no, so I'm not aware of it. But
you can
I
talk
know the
about
scene.
music.
I think I know the scene. I know the jam band scene. I think
Well, I was
so.
cruising into the VIP area because I don't like to slum it. I don't
You're
wanna be a
you're always a VIP. I see. I
you
got you.
know what they call the people that who go there and sort of slum it and, are camping out and everything for, like, day on day on day on.
Hippies.
They call them wooks, the wooks.
Okay.
It's short for
Okay.
Wookiee, you know,
Gotcha. I
like in
gotcha.
Star Wars. Anyway,
Yeah.
everybody comes out of there with the Wook flu from all the dust, that's kicked up. But anyhow, this guy was security, and I was walking by him, and I said something to him, and he said, "Oh my god, listen to your voice." My wife, she just rolls her eyes, I've got a vocal coach, actually. After dad died, I decided I wanted to work out my grief, and I've always
Uh-huh.
liked to sing. So
Yeah.
I went on and I, contracted with this woman who's, fronts some of these
I
bands.
thought you were joking. So you're not joking. You seriously, you got yourself a vocal coach. I thought you were joking at first. I
I
thought
got a
he's telling a
vocal
joke here.
coach to
But
help me
he's
out.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
and I'm not really looking to
but
get
not for the
involved.
but what but for singing specifically to
Yeah,
become a
yeah, and
singer.
actually you can
Okay.
find I think last week we went live on Substack, so you can find the Harrowings podcast dash Sunny Triple.
Okay.
And
That's
it's
nice.
the 2 of us, and I actually sing through that. I did it
So you say
also during
singing.
our
Oh, wow.
interview. We did an interview before that. I just
So you
find
have
things I like.
you're all over the place, man. You got everything going on. You
Well, all
sing
over the place is
the
the
fife. You
problem,
sing.
right?
I don't know. I don't think so, man. That's
I'm a
how
little
people.
scattered.
I am too. But people say, what's your Substack about or whatever, and that with the same thing. I can always use the analogy of Seinfeld. Remember Seinfeld, the show, and how
Yeah,
he used to
about
say
nothing.
it's a show about nothing, a show about nothing. I like to say my Substack is the opposite of Seinfeld, in that it's about everything, and it's exactly as unpopular as Seinfeld was popular. So 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 it's
Well, you're going to be much more
it's
popular after this. I'm going to
oh,
blast
sure.
you to
No,
everybody.
yeah, sure. No doubt.
I'm a believer in the power of the networks. Let me tell you this little story. And you tell me about your mediums too, and
Sure.
all the different
Sure.
networks you've got going on, because I bet you
Okay.
got a lot. Here's
Wow.
here's the deal, as Joe Biden would say. Here's the deal. I went online,
Miller.
in 1994. I got an University of Pittsburgh graduate student, and I got an email address, and I was fascinated
I
because
remember that man, those days.
before
Yeah.
that, you had to sit there and write a letter and put a
Yeah.
stamp on it and mail it,
Yeah. Yeah.
or get charged an exorbitant amount for a long distance call. But here you could
Yeah.
reach out across the globe for almost free and touch somebody else's brain with your words. And I
Yeah.
thought, hell, man, this is great. And then the internet, the World Wide Web came up, and I got a
Right.
website. I built it out. It was like stupid, but I just found, oh, I can link and I can link and I can link and I can be a hub for all kinds of stuff. And it's actually still out there on the Wayback Machine, right? In archive.org.
Mm.
Um, so I sometimes go back and revisit it. I published my translations of Sprengel's Handwerk and Kunst in Tabellen, which is a book of trades and arts, vocational textbook published in Berlin, 1767 to 1777, Williamsburg.
So you're a
Done.
wait. So you're fluent in German then? Is that German? Is that what that?
That German to
What?
English, that's right. And
Wow. My wife
I
is
was
as well. Interesting.
a freelance translator for a
Wow.
while after I got my master's degree, but I
Wait, where
wasn't.
did you learn German? So where did you learn German?
Oh, good question. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Frau Sherman, in Lafayette High School, her father had been killed by the Nazis, and she had been raised in Switzerland. And she married an American history professor, I think, or I don't know, was it a history professor? I don't know. But Sherman, Professor Sherman, married her. She came to New York as a youngster right after the war, sort of orphaned, but I think her mother was still alive. But Frau Sherman taught German in Lafayette High School, and I wanted to learn it because my father had taken German in William and Mary when he was a student, learning
Mhm.
history, initially chemistry, but then. And speaking of your chemistry and your biologicals, and paint and stuff, he
Yes.
worked in a paper mill where he was responsible
Yes.
for
That's another.
chemical
It
content.
was a lot of bacterial growth in paper mills too. We have major issues, but yeah.
Exactly, he was pretty deaf from that. But anyhow. He would throw around "Ich habe Hunger" at the dinner table, and I was fascinated, This is a different language, and we also knew he had read the poetry of Walter von der Volkerweide. I don't even pronounce it well, but
So
Walter
how
of
old
the
were
Fairy
you when you
Meadows.
started? How old were you when you started studying? Not till high school you started studying
Yeah,
German,
high
or
school,
this is
was doing
and
Latin
you
in
became
Catholic
fluent.
school. I got bullied out
Uh,
of Catholic school by the guidance counselor's son, so that didn't
I
help.
went to Catholic school myself.
And once I was out of there, I went to public school and they offered German. So that was 10th grade. 10th
So you must
grade
have
was what?
a knack for it then. You sort of have a knack for the language then, because it's difficult to pick up a language, become fluent at that age. Starting at that age, it's
It's
not as
helpful. And
easy.
I was just taking German
Yeah.
courses in college after that because I had,
All right.
some degree of German. I was in the advanced
Uh-huh.
composition for my freshman year. And then I was taking all these different courses from Dr. Noe and Dr. Barrett at the Randolph-Macon College. Dr. Noe always dressed in a three-piece suit and looked very German, but he was actually from North Carolina. He'd been an Air Force officer in Greenland and stuff, and got his
Uh,
PhD at UVA. And Barrett got his PhD in Kentucky.
my
Both of them now passed away, but they were wonderful. And
my wife went to UVA.
Noe
She
was
me a
a
master's.
as well,
Hypnotist.
hypnotist as well as owning controlling interest in a wine importing company in Richmond. Um,
Huh.
his wife was an artist. He had a beautiful house on the the North Anna River, I think, Stone Cliff or something. I think it was called. And he used to teach us like German wine tasting and things like that. And
German
when I
wine tasting.
told the journeyman
Interesting.
after I was there, I was in the foundry working, and the journeyman Doc Hassel was real contrary. Dropped out of UVA in 1968 and, did a few too many psychedelics, but took a job in the foundry. People would come into the shop and say, "Hey, what you doing?" He'd say, "Oh, whiskey and acid." Yeah.
Gewürztraminer. That's the German wines, right? The Gewürztraminers. Gewürztramинers. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Am I saying that right?
Gewürztraminer.
Closely right?
Yeah,
I'm not
pretty
sure. It's not
close.
very good.
Yeah,
I
it's
later well,
Dr.
it's a
Cocktail.
white wine, right? It's a white that's
The
kind of a
whites
very
were my
dry.
favorites. Like Liebfraumilch is like the worst of the whites because it's like collected off the cutting room floor or whatever. Uh, anyway, but when I
It's,
told Doc about Dr. Noe and his background as having all this hypnotist German professor, he was
yeah.
I think he was actually an Episcopal priest as well, come to think of it. So he had all this cred behind him.
Huh.
And Doc just listened and said, "Well, if he couldn't get laid, nobody could." But he was droll. I remember I
That's a
was
good way to
telling
put it.
Doc one time I was worried about eternal life, that it might be boring. And he just
Mhm.
looked at me and said, "Well, not if you're in hell. Are you bored? Do you need something to do?"
Right. That's funny.
Anyway, yeah. Doc passed away a little bit ago, but he was working on a translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses from Latin into English. The
Wow.
guy read
Oh wow.
Latin for fun.
That's
So he
great.
was
That's
like,
kind of like my wife. She's a similar thing. It reminds me of a joke my dentist told me.
yeah.
If I can remember how she's my dentist. This is an old dentist I used to have, and she was very, very robotic. This woman. She was not funny at all. She was a kind of person that like I don't know. You remember that person in high school or whatever that was like super popular, really funny, and everybody loved it. Everything he said, people laughed. So that imagine the exact opposite of that. That's my dentist. That's this woman who's my dentist. So she'd never joke. She never made a joke. She barely smiled.
Yeah.
And then one day I went in there and I said asked something about she's like, are you flossing? And I said, yeah, I occasionally I can't remember I can't remember exactly what it was.
Mm.
I'm going to ruin it if I don't get the line right. So I'm going to hold this joke until I remember the line. But if I think of it, I'll deliver it because it doesn't work if the line's not exactly right. But anyways, she made a very funny joke. The point was she made a very funny joke for a not a very funny lady at the time, and it cracked me up. And I've still remember it to this day. Although at the moment I can't remember it. But I promise you, it was so out of character. That's why it struck me. It's so interesting.
Right. Right.
People
When
do
things are
that
out
from
of
time to time.
character.
Yeah, way out of character. Way out of
That's
character.
kind
The
of
way
like
she
when,
said it was so dry because that's the way she was as a person. When someone like that says something funny, it's so shocking because the way they say it is so serious that and you don't know if they're trying to be joking or not, really. And it was very bizarre, very bizarre. But, all right, Hal. Well, I actually got to go here. I hate
I
to
see that we're
ruin
coming
this.
up on an hour mark, and I think that's a
Yes,
good
yes,
point to jump off. And we can do it again sometime if you feel like it. But thank
yeah,
you. Really appreciate you coming on.
yeah.
And
I wouldn't
anybody
mind it, man.
who's
That'd be great.
out there in the field who wants to come on sometime, hit me up. I like going live. This is kind of fun.
It is kind of fun. I'm gonna send you that story. I wrote a story about the dentist thing, and I will send you the story. I promise, so you can see and actually read and read about what she said. So
Yeah, I'm going to, yeah, I see that they got bathroom robe guys asking. Great. Well, we're going to just hit the end button here and off
yeah,
we'll go. Thank you again.
thanks,
And hang
bathrobe
in
guy.
there, man. Glad you're alive.
Thanks, me too, man. Thanks, you
Keep
too, Hal.
breathing.
Hey, look for that NPR job. I think it's calling your name. I will. All
We'll
right, man.
see. Maybe somebody will pick me up and,
It might.
I'm
It might.
available.
Don't forget about me. Don't forget about the little guys like us when you make it big, when you hit the big
Oh,
time.
yeah, man. Absolutely.
Later, dude. Thanks. Thanks for having me, man. It was fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Yeah, later.